we get started, I want to say that your book, Sex, Drums, Rock and Roll, came out a few years ago. It's absolutely fantastic. You've got loads of brilliant stories in there, really in depth, some brilliant pictures and things like that in there. So we're going to touch on certain little bits from that, but I recommend everybody to check out that book, Sex, Drums and Rock and Roll, because it is brilliant. And I want to say as well that the foreword was written by the legend that was Neil Peart. I mean, if there's anyone going to write a foreword for a drummer, then he's got to be up there at the top of the list, hasn't he? How did all that come about?
Well, Neil and I had worked together when he was producing the Buddy Rich big band, Burnin' for Buddy Rich, and it was a 2 CD thing, 2 CDs on Atlantic Records, and I was in the early '90s, and I was called by Kathy Rich, Buddy's daughter, to be part of that recording, and Neil was producing, so I met him on that, and then he was very, 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 very nice, very sweet, very focused, knew what he wanted to do, and I was working and that was done in New York, but later that year I was recording up at Morin Heights, which was a studio where Rush had recorded and all kinds of bands about maybe an hour outside of Montreal, and I was recording with Corey Hart, and all of a sudden I see Neil's head pop through the door, very humbly trying to get my attention. I went, "Neil, what are you doing here?" Had no idea that they had worked there a lot, or I didn't think about it at the time. And then he asked me if I could play percussion with him on like 8 or 16 measures of Pick Up the Pieces that Steve Ferroni had played drums on. Steve didn't want to do a drum solo, and Neil thought it'd be cool if we did a whole percussion thing together. And we did, and I'd done a lot of percussion and orchestrating that sort of thing on Mellencamp records, so I kind of knew you can start from low frequencies, you start working your way up through percussion till you get the high frequencies, and I was sharing those ideas with Neil, and we had an incredible time. We talked about me being the Ball Bandito brothers, and then I went to his house, and either that day, I think later that day, and we listened to the whole record and drank some scotch, and we became very good friends. And then when it was time for me to get somebody to do the forward of the book, I wanted somebody that understood me. Now, he and I both are into jazz, both ended up as rock drummers, career-wise, and both of us are very into sports. And I thought this guy will understand me on those levels. And he asked me to send him 3 chapters, and he said, "This is great." So he wrote the forward, and it was pretty close to when he was diagnosed with cancer, Yeah, so I felt honored,
Absolutely fantastic. Well, like I said, everyone check out the book. It is fantastic to read, and you'll hear more stories in there than we can get through on a little interview like this, but definitely check out Sex, Drums, Rock and Roll. So you mentioned Mellencamp quickly there. We have to start there, really, don't we? I mean, a long and fruitful career and association with John, and some fantastic hits, some great records, that sort of thing. But first off, what was it like working with John in the studio, creating songs and putting records together?
Well, there was a lot of pressure on us because he had a lot of pressure on him. He'd already lost his record deal. And the first record that came out where he had a record deal, they changed his name from John Mellencamp, which is his family name or given name, to Johnny Cougar, and he was not happy with that. And when the record came out, it didn't do well. He lost his deal in 1 year. So when he finally got another deal, he was adamant about being successful. And we would rehearse from 11 in the morning till 5 at night, and then take a dinner break for 2 hours and work from 7 to 11, 5 days a week, like a business. And his whole thing, one day he walked in the studio after we'd had a big success with American Fool, a #1 and #2 hit single in the top 100 on the Billboard charts, those are the charts. When you're #1 on those charts, you're #1. There's a lot of charts, and people say, I've had 20 #1 hits. But the charts don't mean anything. This is where you're competing with the Rolling Stones, Elton John, the Police, Tom Petty, whoever is the greatest, and you're competing with the industry on all formats.
Yeah.
So if you're #1 on that top 100, you are literally #1 in the country, if not the world. So after that record, John came in one day and went, "Listen, you guys, I need ideas. I need hits. I need people to come up with innovative and creative ideas to make my songs become hits on the radio. Because the North Star, and I figured this out after I got fired after being in the band for 5 weeks from making that record, Nothing Matters and What If It Did. Suddenly I realized, oh my God, this is not about me at all. This is about me getting a song on the radio. What is my contribution to that song, to that artist? What can I do as a drummer and a person to get that song on the radio to be number one? That's Super Bowl mentality. Yeah. You're not thinking about you. You're thinking about the team, the song, the artist. It's not about me. That was a huge revelation for me. And that is what made me who I became. So, yeah, he was right. I need ideas to get these songs on the radio to have hits. And he said, Kenny, if somebody has a better drum beat than what you're playing, you play it. And everybody in this band, you don't own your instruments. We all play each other's instruments. Whatever it takes to get a number one hit. And he walked out of the room, and I thought, what a jerk. But he was right. Emotionally, I was like, wait a minute, it's about me. He was right. He says, what do we as a group need to do to get on the radio and beat out Tom Petty and Billy Joel and Sting and the Police and Springsteen and Elton John? I mean, there's only 10 slots in the top 10. So to be number one, you're telling everybody, wow, you just blew everybody out. So he was right in that regard. So there was a lot of pressure all the time, whether it was in the studio or on stage, to be great. And we went from playing in front of 1,000 people to selling out arenas all around America, double nights, 2 nights in a row, Madison Square Garden, 2 nights, no opening act, just us, 360 degrees, flying around in private jets. But this didn't come this came from hard work, self-discipline, perseverance, and never taking your foot off the gas. We went 8 years nonstop, rehearse for, John would write the songs, and we'd have to come up with parts to make those songs great as a team. I mean, it always went to me first. Like, what do you got, Aronoff? After listening to a song once, and I'd be like, and he admitted they all sounded the same. Acoustic guitar, and I'd have to come up with I came up with a method, how to come up with creative ideas. But it was a lot of pressure. And then, he would write songs, we'd arrange the songs, go in the studio, rehearse them, throw songs out, regroup, do it again. That would take a year. Mix, master. Then we do promotion and make videos, do interviews and stuff for about a month or so. Then rehearse for tour, then go on tour. That's 2 years. Take a month off and start again. We did that for 4 consecutive records, and we ended up playing in arenas. And we were set up to possibly go into stadiums, but John quit the music business for about 3 years. He said, I've had enough. He was fried. Yeah. And that was a real pivotal point for me, because when he quit, and it was at the last show of the Lonesome Jubilee tour, we just sold out a Summerfest. He says, he throws a bonus check at me back when they gave bonuses out, and he said, man, I'm quitting the music business for 3 years. Don't spend it in one place. I went, what? So I was freaking out. Yeah. I'd just gotten divorced, and I had, expenses, and I went, wow, if that guy doesn't work, I don't work. I said, that'll never happen again. So I decided, all right, the next day I woke up and went, all right, he's not working, but I'm going to work with all the other people that are out there that are big. And I started going to LA, and started doing sessions. And eventually I got in to the scene where I had drums in New York, Nashville, LA, Indiana, where I lived, Japan and Germany. And eventually people would fly me all over the world to make records. And I ended up playing on, the last I counted was 300 million records sold. I got some gold records here that Meatloaf up there, that sold 400 million records. And then there's a Celine Dion record right there that sold basically 400 million records. Labels making 85 cents on the dollar. You do the math. That's a lot of money they can reinvest in new artists. Well, that whole thing just completely went away. That's why I moved everything to LA, and you're in my studio, Uncommon Studios, LA, because I have a thing called adapt or die. In any business, doesn't matter if you're on a basketball court or, playing sports or on a rock and roll stage or you're in a corporate boardroom meeting, you have to come up with creative and innovative ideas to come up with solutions to problems, as I did for Jack and Diane, that makes the company millions of dollars. And if you don't, you're going to lose your place. You're going to be not relevant, and that's why I say adapt or die.
Or die. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Just jumping back, you mentioned Jack and Diane there. We have to touch on that. I mean, an incredible song. It's not a normal song in any way. It starts, it stops. It's got different instrumentation. The claps are in there. It's a very strange, structured song. And you've got the drum machine on there as well. So take us through the process of putting that one together. And to begin with, how was your feelings about working with the drum machine? Was it your choice, or was it kind of something you were told that was going to happen?
It wasn't my choice. I walk into the room. It was the most difficult record I've ever made in my life, and that record won 2 Grammys and sold millions. We spent 9 weeks at Criteria Studios in Miami, and basically walked out with 4 songs. 2 guys got fired. I almost got in a fist fight with John because he was being a complete idiot to me. And I walk in one day, and the co-producers got a metal box, and I went, "Hey Don, what's that?" And he goes, "Oh, this is the Bee Gees are using it next door. It's the newest thing. It's called the Lin 1 drum machine." I went, "Drum machine? Oh my God, that replaces drummers!" And so that was a moment where I didn't realize it was like survival. It's not fight or flight. For me, it was fight or fight. I grabbed the machine, and this is an adapt or die situation. Yeah. Perfectly adapt or die. I grabbed the machine, grabbed the manual, and I go, I'm going to be a part of this new technology.
Yeah, own it, yeah.
If I'd gone and sulked and been like, God, woe is me, I wouldn't have programmed that thing. Somebody else would have programmed it. So I just want to be part of it. So I get the manual, and I basically program what I was playing on the drum set. But you have to remember, this is a new technology, a new sound. So, and In the Air Tonight with Phil Collins was already on the radio, and that was exactly drum machine and drums. So I program this, I give it back to them. It's got 8 outputs. The Lin 1 had 8 outputs. They could bring every fader up on the board, and they were mixing stuff. And I'm thinking in the lounge, I'm like, God, what's going on? Are the drummers being replaced by machines? Mm-hmm. Is that what's happening? Am I in the horse and buggy business and the car showed up? It's like, and you're like, hey, guess what? Bye-bye, And 2 hours later, I get summoned into the control room. And John goes, hey, dude, we need a drum solo or a drum break right here after the second chorus. And I'm crapping my pants. But I'd learned my lesson 2 years prior when I'd gotten fired. I kept going, save the song, save your career. Serve the song, serve the artist, serve the band, serve the producer, serve everybody. What can I do to get this song on the record? Because this song was not on the record.
Oh.
Cool song, very unique. It's just a kind of acoustic song. Great words, lyrics. But we had to come up with a way to arrange it and present it that had relevance. So, I think we spent all day getting drum sounds, because back then they put drums in vocal booths. They could control the sound better. Now John wants the biggest sound in the world. We put it in a big room, but nobody knew where to put the mics. Obviously, the close mics, the overheads. But where do you put the room mics? And then what kind of chain of EQ and compression and effects do you do? And it took all day to figure this out.
Wow.
Meanwhile, I'm thinking, come up with a drum part that's going to save the song. So now it's my moment. I'm crapping in my pants. And the machine's going, goose, goose, goose. Bam, boosh, doosh, doo. Bam, boosh, doosh, doo. Kablam! Kick drum on the and of 3, flam on the snare drum on 4, and I stopped. And I looked in the control room to get some validation. And I had 9 guys going like this. So that's 18 thumbs. So, you know what my first thought was? I still got my job. That's what I thought. So then I thought, well, everybody goes down the drums. I'm going to go up the drums. So I was mimicking what the bass drum was doing, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 1, 4. And I hit a dead end. Those all, no, John asked me to come in. Cortisol levels go up, adrenaline goes up. I'm scared I'm going to be fired again. And I got half the people telling me what to do and half the people telling me not what to do. Suddenly a light went off in my head. I went, it's up to you, buddy. It's all on you to save your career. I walked out to the big room. I looked at the drums. I went, this is like the World Series. And you're up to bat. You hit a home run, you're the hero. You strike out, you're the loser. That's the way I looked at it. So I'm 40 feet away from my drums going, what are you going to play, Kenny? I'm 30 feet. I don't know. I'm like 20 feet. Dude, this is your career. 10 feet. I don't know what I'm going to play. I get to the drums. I put my headphones on. I'm looking at them, look at the drums, and all of a sudden, thank God, a light went off in my head. I went, look, I have no idea what to do different. So why don't you use what you've already been doing? And in a nutshell, I took that beat that I was playing. I went up the tom-toms, but instead of starting on 1, I moved the whole thing over 1/8 note. I don't know why I came up with that. Maybe it was from all the drum books I was working out of. But I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, And by the time I got there, John's hitting talkback, hit a cymbal. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, boom, blam, ba-doom, hit the cymbal. Now I'm at the top of it. I just said, I'm going to take what Phil Collins used. Ran out of drums, so I made a triplet. Bop, boom, boom, boom. Touchdown. Everybody loved it. Mick Ronson from David Bowie's band was in there watching us record. He's a friend of John's. He suggested that Kenny keep playing a beat and let everybody sing some sort of a cappella thing. So let it rock, so let it roll, let the Bible Belt come save my soul. So let it rock, so let it, it was this big anthem thing. So I didn't even hear that. John just said, come on, keep playing a beat. So I started by playing 16th notes on the hi-hat and going, do-ga-doom, ga-doom, do-ga. He goes, too much hi-hat. That was his way of talking, scream at you. Too much hi-hat. So I went, all right, mofo. And I didn't play any hi-hat. Said, play some hi-hat. So I had been listening to Steve Gadd playing on a Chick Corea album, and a song called Lenora, and he was doing this thing where we go boom, and he hit the floor tom on beat 4. That's where I came up. Steve Gadd playing with a jazz artist influenced me to come up with boom, ba-da-doom, boom, floor tom and snare drum. So when I played the hi-hat on 3E and it opened up. Boom, ba-da-boom, scum, boom, ba-ga-goom, scum, boom, ba-da-doom, ga-gum. Touchdown. I didn't even hear the end result till the song was done, mastered, and recorded. It was this mammoth thing. So I'm just grateful the song got on the record. Mm-hmm. Now, back then, they released the first single. Back then, what they do is they play all the songs on top 100 radio, and people call up and say, hey, I like that song. And people can call up and voice their opinion. And they start rating. People wanted Hurt So Good. They release Hurt So Good. Hurt So goes flying up the charts, hits number 2. For 6 weeks, we couldn't beat out Eye of the Tiger. But, you know, Rocky 1 was out. So the movie is selling the record's selling the movie. So there's no way we're going to beat out Eye of the Tiger. So they start seeing that Jack and Diane is testing so high. Everybody likes that song. They'll play it specifically in certain markets, maybe New York, Seattle, Boston, whatever. Tested so high, they release it as the second single as Jack and Diane goes down to 3 and 4. Release Jack and Diane now. We're like, really? That's your next single? Jack and Diane goes flying all the way, hits number 1. Hurt So Good goes back up, Now we got 2 songs in the top 10. We're all over MTV. Next thing you know, we're on Saturday Night Live. All the TV shows, Solid Gold, Dick Clark, you name it, we're on it. SCTV up in Canada. John's career completely blows up. My career is launched. Who's that drummer? And the room I was in at Chateau Marmont Hotel on Sunset when I got fired 2 years ago, I was in that same room when that song went to number 1.
Wow.
And here's what I did. I celebrated for 2 seconds, and then I went, holy shit, I'm not number 1. I got to do it again. How am I going to do it again? He hasn't written a song yet. I got to wait for John to write a song, and then I got to come up with a great drum part to prove that I'm a great drummer. That was in my mind. It's like a running back in football. They get a touchdown, they're immediately like, I need to do this again to show people that I'm really good. It's not like a one-off deal. So I never bought that number 1 thing. I was grateful, but I was like, I got to do it again. What's next? What do I do? I need to practice. How can I get better? I have a saying. It goes like this. I'll never be as great as I want to be, but I'm willing to spend my entire life trying to be as great as I can be. I mean, that's just like it's like a running back in football. They don't score touchdowns every time they get the ball. Sometimes they do. Sometimes 5 yards, sometimes 0, sometimes -2, sometimes fumble. Sometimes they break their leg in preseason and they're out. But they come back because they love football. I'm a running back in the music business. I just keep going in the end zone, Give me it again.
Workhorse.
Try again.
Yeah.
Try again. Workhorse. Go.
Yeah.
And that's how you build it. That's how you build a career.
Incredible stuff. It sounds like you're so driven as well, and it's such an environment for that, because by the sounds of it, John was a bit of a taskmaster as well, and you're working and you're pushing yourselves, and between you and the group and John and everyone is really trying to bring out the best in everybody, and it just sounds like almost the best way to start a career, because from that point on you can only go and keep developing and pushing yourself.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that you either get it or you don't.
Yes.
Some people would go on like, I'm out of here. And 2 guys did quit in the making of American Fool. After I've been in 2 years, they went, it's not worth it. Not me. I'm not saying it was enjoyable. I mean, it was enjoyable times, but it was tough. But I recognized this is incredible. Mm-hmm. I'll be playing with John real soon for a big event at the Indianapolis Stadium, the Colts Stadium, Indianapolis. I go up to him and hug him and say, I did the Kennedy Center Honors with him, and I've done Music Cares. I'm always grateful. Man, I learned so much by being around him and watching how he handled things. Yeah. Learned so much. I won't even list it. It was just incredible. Totally invaluable. At the time, I didn't realize everything I was learning, but I see it now. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And also going through that type of experience, fighting to become great and being part of having a leader that didn't drink, didn't do drugs, totally clear-minded, and just driven, everything from what you wear, the way we look on stage, the way we move, being very aware of the brand before we even knew what that word meant. And being around that was, like you said, was an incredible foundation to deal with all kinds of things from that point on. The easiest things and the hardest things. Yeah. Because you don't want to be the person that depends on people to motivate you and to validate you. You want to validate yourself. You need to be honest with yourself, totally clear who you are. And I don't believe in the words mistakes or failures. I refuse to use those words anymore because they trigger all kinds of emotions. When you were a little kid, where your dad said, you effed up, or your teacher said you're a loser, or your friends say you're a loser, your teacher said you got an F, that you need to work harder. Kenny, you're not doing a great job, right in front of the class. It triggers all those emotions that you will never get rid of. But you learn to replace them with the new thought process, which is like, when I do something that I didn't like, or I didn't wish I hadn't done, whether it's live or in the studio or wherever, you just say, focus, learn from this, adjust, adapt, and make it better. And every quote unquote thing that doesn't work out for you is a gift to help you get better. You think Tom Brady or Mahomes from Kansas City freak out when something goes wrong? They get disappointed for a second and they go, all right, what can I learn from that? I have 3 minutes to win the Super Bowl to get in the end zone. And Mahomes proved that last year in the Super Bowl
Yes.
with a busted up leg and playing against her intense defense.
Yeah.
He figured it out with his coach. So these are gifts that help you become the best that you can be. And that's my goal, is just to be the best I can be and get the most value out of this short little life I got.
Absolutely. And then you mentioned, obviously, following on from John deciding to take a break from the music business, that you decided you were going to put your efforts into serving loads of different people and becoming the best session drummer out there. And you wouldn't commit to just one person again. It would be all the different people. And it was Don wasn't it, that really helped you get your way into that kind of way of working?
Yes. I was working with Don He called me up and asked me if I could do a Bob Dylan record. And then Bob was on tour, so I'm like freaking out. Are you kidding me? But then Bob couldn't do it because he was on tour for a while. Then he says, well, how about Iggy Pop? I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah. And I'm recording an Iggy Pop record, and Don, he went to the Grammys. I was like so focused on just drums, Iggy Pop, and all of a sudden I walk in one day and I said, "Where's Don?" I said, "Oh, he had to go to the Grammys." We recorded a little bit, and then he went to the Grammys, and he wins 2 Grammys, one for "Nick of Time" with Bonnie Raitt, which was her comeback record, and then he won "Love Shack" for the B-52s. He produced that, and all of a sudden Don's got 2 Grammys. There's our guy, barefoot, glasses, and he comes back, and next thing you know, he said, "Hey, you want to record a Bob Seger record?" "Yeah." "Hey, you want to record Elton John 4 songs?" "Yeah." And it went on and on and on. And all of a sudden, Don blew up, and I was right there with him. The Highwaymen, which is Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings. Movie soundtracks. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And B.B. King and Bonnie Raitt at the same time doing a song for Air America. I mean, it was unbelievable. And, so all of a sudden, my cred went up outside of John Mellencamp, and I suddenly realized I had 2 careers. And there's where the conflict came in, because I was on a very small retainer. I took myself off retainer with the idea that if he calls, I'm not on retainer anymore. And he did call. I was doing a Little Feat record. The Little Feat band, Richie Haywood, the incredible drummer who was playing with Eric Clapton, they got me to play with them, and we were backing up like the Madonna of Sweden. She was a megastar, stadium. So we did that record, and I get a call that, from John's right-hand man, said, "John needs you this Thursday." I said, "I can't. I'm working 2 weeks with Little Feat." He says, John says, "Well, look, you can do that stuff, but when I need you, I need you." I totally get it. But I said, "John, they moved their entire schedule to accommodate me. And they built this whole session around me. I can't leave."
Yeah.
And so I get it. I mean, John wanted a drummer that was accessible 24/7. And I was becoming that guy that was not accessible 24/7. And eventually, we just parted ways.
Yeah, indeed. And you mentioned some of the incredible names that you worked with, and I think I either saw the interview or I read the interview, and you were working with the Highwaymen, and was it Meatloaf pretty much at the same time? And it just shows the diversity of music that you were playing, all out rock with Meatloaf and the over the top stuff, and then you've got the Highwaymen there as well at the same time. It's just incredible.
Well, add the Buddy Rich Big Band. I took the red eye to fly to New York to perform with the Buddy Rich Big Band on the weekend, and then fly back and continue Meatloaf and the Highwaymen. But the greatest one was when I recorded with the Buddy Rich Big Band, Burning for Buddy CDs. I had spent 1 week in Philadelphia recording with Cinderella.
Oh, wow.
Then I went to Nashville and recorded 1 week with Hank Jr. Then I flew to New Orleans and recorded some I don't even know who it was, New Orleans type of thing. Then I went to Canada, spent a week recording a country record with a girl, Patricia Conway, I believe. And then I flew to New York and recorded with the Buddy Rich Big Band. I mean,
Incredible.
it's let me explain that. You've scored a touchdown when you practice your butt off and you get in a band and it's selling out arenas and you're all over the radio and MTV and you're on tour and you're in your private jet. You score a touchdown if you become a big session drummer in any one of the big markets, which was back then New York, Nashville, LA. But I was doing both. And there was a few of us doing the same thing. Steve Lukather, for example, he was doing the same thing, both. Session guy, Toto, solo record, solo career. But, then it gets deeper because then when you start being the person they want you around because you motivate the room, you save sessions, your contribution as a person, your personality, you know how to connect with people, you know how to communicate with people, you know how to collaborate. That now becomes a whole nother thing. Now you're really becoming there's a handful of people who do all of that. So, I mean, I didn't have this master plan, but as I look back, I think my intuition was exactly what I did. And now I realize why that worked and how that happened.
Sounds incredible. I mean, I remember Leland Sklar saying that sometimes he kind of wished that he was part of a band and he was almost like Flea, where he had one band and he traveled and he only had to learn those songs rather than everybody else's songs and that sort of thing. I mean, he's had an incredible career, same as you. But do you sometimes wish that you were part of a band in that way, that you didn't have to float between everything, or would you not have got the kind of buzz that you got from doing what you did with so many different people and so many different genres and styles and places like that?
Oh, I definitely think I like playing with everybody. Even when I was in the Mellencamp band, as big as we were, when I started recording with like Brian Setzer or Belinda Carlisle, we did Heaven on Earth, her first #1 hit single outside of the Go-Go's. I mean, that was such a rush. Or Bob Seger, or going on tour with the Smashing Pumpkins, recording with John Fogerty. Oh man, or Joe Cocker. I mean, this is like incredible. So yeah, I want both. I wanted both, I mean, I interviewed Lee on my, podcast, the Kenny Aronoff Sessions, and Lukather, and my intros were like these long discographies. I wanted people to hear who these people play with. I was doing Lee Sklar, and I'm naming name after name after name after name after name, and I get to James Taylor, I got 14 albums. I said to the people viewing, I said, you have to understand, when somebody asks you to play on 14 records, it's not just how good a player you are.
Yes.
It's that they want you there because of who you are, your personality. It's not just about how good you play. There's all this other stuff. So I like playing with lots of different people because it's stimulating. It makes me feel good mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So, yeah. I don't know if Lee would have been happy with just one band. Sure, I'd love to have been in Led Zeppelin, yeah. But I think I still would have always wanted to do other things.
Yeah.
It's just the way I'm wired.
Yeah, absolutely. It's worked for you. You've thrown out even more names there. Let's touch on a couple of them. I mean, John Fogerty, absolute legend, as you said. Playing with someone like that who's got such a rich history before you join him, and everyone knows how he sounds and how Creedence sounded and things like that. So what was it like when you joined John and you were backing up him? What advice or what instruction did he give to you?
Well, the thing about John, I mean, he was my hero. I was I was a kid, a teenager, listening to Creedence.
Yeah.
Almost went to Woodstock. I only grew up 3.5 hours away, and I missed it. But man, so when I get the call, I had no idea. But I was the 30th drummer after 5 years of recording his record, Blue Moon Swamp. 30th drummer. Somebody finally recommends Kenny Aronoff. And I was told not to even bring my drums. I'm like, really? And I got there, and he would tune the snare drum. And it was my favorite snare drum, Superphonic 400 Ludwig 5x14, which I ended up creating see if I get my finger over there, right there, my signature series snare drums. That's a 6x14. They're only making 25 of them, 40 years being with Tama. Hand engraved. It's my tattoo engraved around that drum. But anyway, the first edition was a 5x14, and that was a model off of his favorite snare drum, the Superphonic 400 Ludwig. But he would tune his kick drum and snare drum and have somebody tune the toms. We play a very simple song. We play it twice. It was just bass, guitar, and him singing, and me. Go in and listen to 2 takes. Let me make a few suggestions. Go out, do 2 more. Come back and listen. 2 more. Come back. After 8 takes, I went, "That's pretty damn good, John. I think we got it." He went, "Nah, I think we'll revisit that a little bit longer." So we do it for 3.5 hours, then have a lunch break, then go to our next song. At the end of the day, he goes, "Kenny, you're the drummer I've been looking for my entire life.
Wow.
Would you come?" Yeah, exactly. Wow. And now you have to understand, he's a genius. He writes the songs, writes the lyrics, arranges the songs. He is the genius behind, Creedence, all those songs. He was the arranger, the producer, the brain behind all of it. Incredible musicologist. He hears things and remembers it and then applies it. So I went, "Absolutely, I'll come back tomorrow." And he was very happy. He says, and so I come back the next day, I go to the engineer, "What are we doing today?" And he's laughing. Same 2 songs. I went, "What? What did I do wrong?" He said, "No, he just likes to do it." So we did the same 2 songs on Tuesday, 3.5 hours each song. We come back the next day, and it's the same 2 songs.
Oh my word.
Come back Thursday, same 2 songs. I mean, you're talking about a guy who gets something in 2 or 3 takes. Finally, Friday, and it seemed like he picked the take on Friday, take 12 or 13, he said on Friday. Probably because by then, we'd been on tour playing those songs, and the energy and the spirit and the vibe on Friday at take 12 or 13 was just magical. Now, I found out later, he wasn't even keeping the bass or his guitar or vocals. He was just going after drum takes.
Wow.
Unbelievable. And so then he asked me to come back the next week, and I went, "Same 2 songs?" He went, "Nope." And I walked in one day and I saw a stack of 2-inch tape, like 1 inch wide. I went, the engineer, "What is that?" And he went, "Backbeats." I went, "What?" He said, "Not yours." "No, not yours." What he would do, and this is what he did in Creedence, if he'd hear a backbeat that was a little bit early, or let's say a little bit late, if it was late, he'd cut a piece out of the tape out and stick it together with Scotch tape. If it was early, he would add a little bit of tape to make it so it would land right in the right spot. He did that back in the day with Creedence before anybody knew that you could cut tape. He was like creating innovative ideas to solve problems. And yeah, I mean, he actually took, back in the Creedence days, he took those little tape edits, those little pieces of tape, put them in an envelope and knocked on his drummer's, Doug Clifford's door. I think he said that in his autobiography. He says, "Here's your backbeats." Anyway, that's the type of how focused he was. And that record won a Grammy, and then he asked me to go on tour. And I went, "I'm in." To play those songs. You see, he had not played his Creedence songs for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I went on tour, we played the Creedence song. It was incredible. All the hits. Actually, you can't play all the hits in one show.
No.
It takes 2 shows, maybe 3 to play all his hits.
Phenomenal stuff. Absolutely phenomenal. Love hearing anything about Creedence. John's a legend, as you said. Someone else that you mentioned, Smashing Pumpkins, quickly touching on them, because you joined them, I think it was just after the Adore album was recorded, I think it was, for the tour, wasn't it? And I saw an interview with Billy Corgan that once said that he made the mistake of hiring additional percussion players. He should have just left it to you and backing loops from the album, that sort of thing. Now, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, they were my favorite, one of my favorite bands at that time. I was a huge fan. They were the biggest alternative band in the world, bigger than Pearl Jam, Nirvana. I mean, they were huge. And they had done Gish, Siamese Dream, and Melancholy, and then they had just recorded Door, and I was the drummer. I won an audition to do the tour, which was huge. I, like those guys in the Smashing Pumpkins, I was shocked that they had 2 massive percussion setups to the right of me and to the left of me back there. Now, Billy didn't hear all the noise because between the percussion and him was his Marshall stacks, and the same with James Iha. But I heard all of it, and it was like a lot of chaos going on. And I thought, and I remember saying at one point early in the tour, I went to that percussionist. I said, dude, can you hear what he's doing? He says, no. And I said, dude, can you hear what he's doing? No. I says, no shit. I can hear what both of you do, and it's completely crazy. It's like two lawnmowers going at two different tempos. They were both doing creative stuff, but it was so much stuff, and it had a vibe to it, but it was very intense for me because my job was to hold this band down I had click track to make sure we played every song in tempo. Check out, there's a recording. It was at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. I want to say 1998, maybe August, at the Fox Theater. It's
Great
really
memory.
great recording. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes, and you'll see I'm playing these parts, but with Billy, he was always left room for improvising. So I'm playing, we have a structure, but when we get to these certain sections, where I had to just guess where he wanted to go. So it was a combination of structure and a lot of dynamics and improvising. And it was an incredible experience for me because most of the bands I played, when you want, like Bob Seger, he wants the same cymbal crash every night, same place. I mean, Billy was like that in many ways too. He had a photographic memory, and he'd want certain things right in the same place, but then he wanted you to be able to just build. And he told me, what you're going to do in this band you haven't done before, which is play massive range of dynamics. And he was right. It was an incredible experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about live stuff. It's the hot topic at the moment, isn't it? People talking about backing tracks and bands that are out on the road at the moment using things that they shouldn't be really. They're not playing live and stuff. What's your opinion on that?
Well, look, you can do that if you want to do it. I mean, it's a lot of sometimes people are doing it because they can't reproduce what they did in the studio. I get it. But I'll tell you this, there's no question that seeing people on stage interact and communicate, let's start with this. All humans are feeling creatures. That's the way we're designed. And I believe we're on this planet to experience feelings and emotions with each other. That's what separates us from being a machine or a robot. And to learn how to navigate through all these emotions and dynamics. When a human in the audience sees other humans up there going through that, they feel like they are part of it. It's an experience. There's a torrid exchange of the emotions between the band and themselves, between the band and the audience, between the audience and the band. That's heavy. If you're playing just backing tracks and you're just standing there like robots, you're missing that whole human experience. Now the audience, the argument might be the audience or the people in that audience say all they want to do is hear what they heard on the record CD or on the Spotify or iTunes. They don't care. They just want to hear it just the way they heard it. Well, you can just put a backing track of the whole show, and then you got actors up there just acting out the parts. If people like that, I can't argue with them because that's their entertainment. I prefer to see people reacting and moving around each other, the dynamics, or somebody is smiling going, you just messed that up. Or, and then you get the combination of loops, and like if Billy had all that percussion, all the loops that were brilliant on the Adora record, and I played to a click track, I'm king of that. That would have been really cool. That probably would have cleaned up because you still had all the improvising going on.
Yeah.
But actually, you're still stuck with what those loops do. Now, with the percussionists, what was great about them is they were reacting to everything. They were all over the place, but they were reacting. So the argument would be that is cool. You see the dynamics up and down, and Billy all of a sudden does something, and I react to it, and they have to come down where I come down. And, it was a lot of excitement. So, yeah, I still will go with the live thing is still my favorite, but I don't disagree with having loops and click tracks, but I don't want to take out that human element. That I don't want to lose.
Absolutely.
Ever.
Absolutely. And just touching on one last thing, I mean, it's an incredible thing to leave till last. I've spoken to so many people and they all say the same thing, that their way into the music business and their love of the music business and want to be a rock star came from one special night watching the TV when four long-haired guys from Liverpool appeared in front of millions of people in America. And well, you're the same. You watched that special night as well, and you got to experience what many people could only dream of when you performed at this special night, the night that changed America, and you got to perform on stage with Ringo and with Sir Paul and all the other incredible guests that came on that night. I mean, just talk to me about how that felt playing with those guys and that night in general and everyone that was involved.
Well, first of all, 50 years after I see the Beatles, and I ask my mom to call them up and get me in the band, which she didn't, obviously. And I realized what my purpose in life was before I even knew what those words meant, but I knew I wanted to do that. And now, 50 years later, I'm playing with them, honoring for that amazing night. That was extremely emotional. But like being in the Super Bowl, I had to focus on winning the game. And so I put those emotions aside and focus song by song by song. After every song, when I do a show like that, I get the script of the show. I know who has to read the teleprompter. If the teleprompter doesn't work, I immediately look at the artist, look at the stage manager, and if the producers are the same thing. So I know when to count off. I'm very highly aware of what's going on, and I'm a problem solver in a situation like that. A lot of things can go wrong.
Yep.
So I have to be ready to adapt to make the show go right. And as a matter of fact, I walked on stage the first day of sound check for the show, and I heard somebody say, "God, thank God he's here." I'm like, who? And he went, "You." I went, "Oh, wow." And what it was the guy was going, the producer was there. It was like, "Dude, I know that, he's seen me do Kennedy Center Honors, all these big specials I did with Don Was. He knows that I get the job done, and I focus." And that's what I did. And it was at the end that I kind of went, oh my God. And I was hanging with Paul and Ringo, and they're telling us stories from Liverpool before the show, like in between rehearsal and the show. I'm hanging with Paul and Ringo, talking about what it was like to be in Hamburg, playing in the clubs and chords and smoking fags, as they call it. And I mean, I just couldn't believe it. It was me, Don Was, Ben Montench from Petty's band with Ringo and Paul. And so all this stuff, and Ringo edifying me when I walked out. I had 30 minutes left. There was 30 minutes left in the show, and I had played with Dave Grohl, John Legend, and Alicia Keys, Joe Walsh, Jeff Lynne from ELO, John Mayer, Keith Urban, to name a few. I walk out to the audience to look for my wife, and there's Tom Hanks, his wife, Ringo Starr and his wife, Paul McCartney's girlfriend, John Lennon and George Harrison's widows, then Sean Penn, Johnny Depp, and Tom Cruise, all there in a row. They're all acknowledging me, but Ringo's applauding and going, "Bravo, Kenny, bravo." I'm like, okay, this is my moment. I just played the Grammys with him the night before, right on that same stage, the Grammys. And 2 weeks before, I'd done a thing where we honored him. I got to play double drums on 4 songs, which, by the way, nobody plays like Ringo. Nobody, not even close. It's a unique feel and sound. Anyway, I get on my knee because everyone's looking at me in the place. There's like 10, 12,000 people there. I get on my knee and I'm trying to think of what I'm going to say to him. And he goes, "That's okay, Kenny, I'm already married." I went, "No, dude, you're the reason why I play drums. You're the reason why I play rock and roll music. You and the Beatles helped me realize my purpose in life, and I just want to thank you." And that was it, and I walked away. It was an amazing moment.
Absolutely incredible. And some of the names that you throw out are just absolutely just mind-boggling to think you've played with all these sorts of people. Is there anybody that you haven't played with that you wish you had have done, or you really want to in future?
Oh, well, I've played with Dave Grohl, but I mean, being the Foo Fighters would be so cool. Or Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. I think he's brilliant. I'd love to play. I recorded an album with Tony Iommi from Sabbath and Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple. That was a band. We did it in Wales at Monmouth Studios. I mean, that. So who else? I
Just
mean, this
touching on
is
that quickly, sorry to butt in there, I don't like to interrupt, but Tony Iommi, working with him, I've spoken with a few people that have worked with him over the years, and he's just the master of the riff, and he gets stuff done as well. I mean, what was it like working with him?
great. It was awesome. Nicest guy in the world. Humble, sweet.
Yes.
I email him every so often. We keep talking about making another record. He was amazing, but oh my God, his sound and his feel was unbelievable. And every riff. I remember Billy Corgan was producing 2 songs, and I recorded on it with Billy in LA, Tony's first record. Billy comes in. I'd met Tony. We're hanging out. Billy comes in and goes right. Billy doesn't hang out. He goes right to business. He says, "Tony, play me a lick." Wow. Billy goes, and play me another one. Billy goes, drums. We go out there. Next thing you know, we're making a record or a song off of those licks. It was insane. Each lick was like a movie theme or something. It's incredible.
Absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Well, Kenny, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you for this last hour or so. Wonderful stories you've got to tell, and even more so in your book. So just plug your book one last time for us.
Well, I actually have it right back here. The book is called Sex, Drums, Rock and Roll, The Hardest Hitting Man in Showbiz. And the book is basically about growing up in a small town of 3,000 people and not knowing, realizing what I want to do for my entire life, but not knowing how to begin to do that and to end up where I am. It's about hard work, self-discipline, and perseverance. Nobody's born successful, and success does not land in your lap. You have to make it happen. And that's what that story is about.
Absolutely. You're a driven individual, that is for sure. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Kenny. Best of luck for everything in the future, and hopefully chat with you again soon.
All right, man. Take care.